What's up? What's up? What's up, y'all? You are listening to the Data is My Science podcast, the show that makes data your passion. This is your host, Dapper Data. That's right, Dapper Data is here, and I have a special guest today. Okay, this is for Data Week. We talked about it before. We talked about how Data Week is going to be very very important for everybody to listen in and tune into the podcast. And as you know, I typically have people on the podcast, right, that are experts. Okay, experts in their field, whether it's data science, whether it's data management, whatever it is, right? Data related, right? I love data. Y'all all know that I love data. So all I do is talk about it all the time. And I know you all are tired of hearing me talk about it. But anyways, so data science has been around for some time and long enough. It's been around to the point where we know that there are different generations that have experienced data, right? You have an older generation out there, right? Probably older than me right now. Then you have a younger generation, right? Younger than me, that is going through the journey. Okay, so you have people that have experienced it. They've been there. They know whether you want to do Python, you want to do R programming. It doesn't matter whether you want to do data visualization, right? Everybody has the same end goal at the end of the day, whether you're older generation or younger generation. But I think that the younger generation has a new way of embracing the craft. Okay. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to hear the new generation, because the new job roles that are out there, the new any of the roles that are related to data science, right? Data engineering, whatever it is, we want to be able to say, this is what I'm going after, right? You kind of don't want to deal with the older mentality, that's the way I look at it. Um, because what's driving it is the younger generation, and we know that the end goal is still the same, as I mentioned before. So I brought on a special guest, somebody that has been in data science for some time, but still a part of the new generation. Okay. Her name is Lexi Vessels. All right. Now Lexi is, I would say that she is very, very smart. She is a genius. She has been through some of the data science realm. She's been able to go through step by step, what it takes to be a data scientist right now, and she's still growing. But, if you look at her title and things like that, she's labeled a data scientist, right? And she has been through some steps, and she's able to share those things. And so that's why I brought her on the podcast. Now Lexi she's currently with Hitachi Vantara Federal. And as you know, I used to be with Hitachi in the past. So, shout out to Hitachi. I love Hitachi, great people. Um, and she's doing some great data science work over there now, right? She's labeled a data scientist over there and has been doing some great things over there right now. But she also, in the past, some of her history, she's worked with the Department of Defense as a data scientist as well, and done some internships related to data science. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about what led Lexi to become a data scientist, some of the favorite programming languages that are out there, right? You have R, you have Python, right? And you'll get a chance to see what her favorite language is. I mean, I'm not biased, but I'll let her
I
talk
am.
about her language. I'll let her say what she wants to say about it. But no. So we'll also talk about data science in the government space, because a lot of people don't understand. They always equate data science to commercial, but wherever you're at, you have data science that can be applicable to any arena, any industry. It doesn't matter. There's data scientists that are everywhere, and if they're not there, those businesses, you all need to hire data scientists, because you're missing out big time. And we'll talk a little bit about the future of data science. But so without further ado, I want to introduce Lexi Vessel. Now, she probably can introduce herself better than I can. I've been doing this thing where I'm trying to introduce people, but I realized that, and we talked about it, Lexi, before, that I think the people, the guests, can introduce themselves better. So, Lexi, go ahead and tell them a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Lexi. I've been a data scientist for oof, 3 to 4 years now, I think. And I studied data science in school. The school that I went to University of Texas at San Antonio.
Mhm.
Um, and they didn't have a data science major there. It's still kind of new in the education field. There are some schools that have it as a major and some that don't. So I did a concentration in data science, and that's where I fell in love with it. And then I started working for the Department of Defense as a data scientist. Um, and now I'm working for Hitachi as a data scientist, and I love it, and I wouldn't change it.
No, that's pretty interesting. So, I mean, the more I think about it, right? Somebody says so based off of what you just said, you actually went in looking to be a data scientist, right?
Yep.
And I don't think I've ever heard that before because most people are not saying, "Hey, I'm going to go in. This is what I want to do from the start," right? They say, "Maybe I want to do computer science," okay, and then eventually they get into programming and they say, "Well, hey, what other roles and opportunities or jobs that are out there?" Um, and or they'll say, "Hey, look, I want to get into." I don't know. I've met people that are data scientists that were financial advisors or something like that at one point, and then they became a data
Yeah.
scientist. Well, and so they jumped crafts. So what made you say, "Hey, I want to be a data scientist" from the beginning?
So, fun fact, I actually started my major as nursing. Um,
Oh.
decided that was not a great idea for me. Not very good with bodily fluids and such. So, um, my my now husband, he wasn't too sure about what he wanted to do either. So he was looking at a bunch of different things. He had some programming books. He had some finance books. And he couldn't make sense of programming. So I
Mhm.
picked it up and I was like, this is like reading the alphabet for me. Like it's not that hard for my brain to understand. Um, so I kind of started looking at the computer science field before I chose my major.
Mhm.
And a big thing that people like to do is software development. That's a huge thing in the tech world is software development. But I don't like just building something and then pushing it off to someone else. I want to actually work with it and see how it impacts the businesses. And so that's how you get into data science, really, right? Because you're manipulating the data and then you get to see how it impacts the business. If I give you these statistics, then you can become better because of it.
No, that's a great point, and the more I think about it, I've been in the government industry as well. And when I look at it, that was one of the toughest parts, right, of being in the government industry was that I don't know every time I do something, I don't know who it impacts or what it does. I just dump it off and send it to somebody, right? Whatever I was
Yeah.
doing. And so, being a data scientist in whatever industry you're in, you have the ability to kind of see it through a little bit more and actually get that gratification, right? From it. Especially at the end, if you have those soft skills and then you have the ability to do presentations on the data that's there and be able to help from a business decision standpoint, right? That's important, So, but yeah, all right. So when you look at next gen data scientists, right? I don't know where I fall because I think I'm like in between, right? I'm getting too old, I don't know, I'm one of those people where I'm just trying to fit in, right? But I look at next generation data scientists, okay? And when I look at that and I think really hard about it, I know that they're starting to break things into certain categories where you say, all right, I'm a data scientist, right? People who are doing the modeling of things,
Hmm.
right? People who have certain end goals, right? That's different from a theory standpoint. Then you have the data engineers, right? Who are, and every role is important, right?
Oh yeah.
You have data engineers, you have the architects from that standpoint, the ones who are building, right? The plumbing aspect. But then you also have like the business developers, right? The business intelligence developers in there. So
Hmm.
you have like your Tableau, you got your Microsoft BI or something like that. And so that's all interesting. And I think the way I look at it is that the next gen data scientist is going to kind of be further defined in those three categories. But you still have to know certain things like your math, your statistics, your visualization, right? And I see a, a data scientist in the future kind of having to be that storyteller at the end of the day and being the person that kind of can know a little bit about all of that. You know, what do you see? What does it mean to be the next gen data scientist? Do you think?
Yeah, I agree. There was a period of time where data science was just kind of a blanket. word for everything.
Mhm.
You have your EDA, you have your machine learning, you have your AI, you have all of it under this one thing, and people didn't really know how to define that. And I think going forward, people are starting to nail down those definitions. This is exactly what we want. This is exactly what we think a machine learning engineer should be. And so I think you're just going to have more defined roles, and maybe instead of one or two data scientists to cover everything, you're going to have kind of like a big team of data scientists, one that does engineering, one that does machine learning, all kind of working together to further the business's goals.
Right. No, I agree. And when you think about it, you have you have that whole process when you ingest data,
Yep.
right? You have to put the data in, you got to clean it, right? Then you
Mhm.
have to like build the model, you got to productize it, all that stuff. Um, I would love, if I was a data scientist, right, in the next generation, I would love to be able to know the whole process and understand it from beginning to end. I mean, if you have that, that's like a Superman or Superwoman, right? Somebody that just,
Yeah.
can do it all, right? And then they can take it from there, right? And they probably make a lot of money because they can do it all. But like you said, right, and being able to, I think that's something to say, like for people who always ask, should I know everything? Should I be jack of all trades? I mean, master
Mhm.
of none, or should I be able to master a specific part? Right? Data science can be so broad.
Yep.
I'm a true believer in mastering like specifics, right?
Yep.
Within that, and so I think that's a good thought process. So well, yeah. So go ahead. What were you about to say?
I was going to say, I think it depends on the companies as well, because there are going to be certain companies that want nothing to do with AI or machine learning. They're only going to want someone that's ever going to focus on that data engineering, the bringing it in, the transforming it, and then the loading it to another database. So I think it's going to be really dependent on where companies are moving forward as well, and not necessarily just on the data scientist. I remember reading when I was becoming a data scientist, I remember reading so many articles about data scientists that were unhappy because it was so much focused on the EDA and the ETL, and not really working towards those models. But if that's only what your company wants, then that's all you can do.
Right,
Um,
right.
so
That's
I
a
think
great.
it'll be interesting.
That's a really great point. Because I guess a lot of people, and even from my standpoint, I'm looking at it as, and maybe it's a selfish thing to do, right? But I'm looking at it as only me. It's all about me, right? I'm a data scientist. This is what I love. This is what I want to do, right?
Yep.
But the companies have different reasons why they're hiring a data scientist, or what
Yep.
they deem may be a data scientist, right? Because sometimes they're
Mhm.
like, it's a data science, but is it really? You might be doing some engineering, you might be doing, something else, So
Yep.
that's a great point, So all right, so I want to rewind a little bit and go over the process to get to where you are now, right? And one of the things you talked about was data science in the government industry.
Mhm.
Okay. And I know that depending on where you worked at, you can only talk about certain things, but when you think about it at a high level, right, a lot of people tend to think that there's a difference, right, between the data science and the government and the commercial. And the way I look at it, because I've been in both industries, is that the end goal is still the same, right? At the end of the day, you're trying to take the data and turn it into something that's actionable or valuable, right? That's just
Yep.
the goal, right? But you tend to work on some things, right? The government is you tend to work on some things that's different in the commercial. Commercial space is always ahead of the game. We talked about it. They're ahead of like the latest technologies and things like that. But then you got the government who's kind of behind, right? They're still doing like analog record keeping and all that, And so you're bringing in a data science to handle some of that stuff where you're like, oh, this is so boring, it's tedious, but I have to do it, right? You got to clean it all up and all that stuff.
Mhm.
Um, but you still have to make sense of the information at the end of the day. What are some of the things that you've seen? When you think about data science in the government, what comes to mind? What are some of the things that you dealt with in the government, at a high level?
So I think there's kind of two swords to data science in the government. Um, There are some things that they push and that they're excelling at and that they're doing really well at, like natural language processing. That is a top thing for them right now. So they are putting so much resources into that to where they're working on it with universities. So they're really trying to further natural language processing, and when you click on a word, what other languages pop up for it. So they're really excelling in that area, right? But they fall short in other areas. At the agency I used to work at, it was a three-letter agency. They had a saying, all the data scientists had a saying, and it was Jupyter notebooks are the Swiss Army knife of data science. um, and of course, you and I know that's not true, but
Right.
the government moves so slow and they are so behind in some of these technological areas that all you had to work with was a Jupyter notebook. So you had to do as much as you could with that one notebook.
Right.
Um, and so it would be you do a one and done kind of job. Oh, well, this person needs this one thing, so I'll make a notebook for it and I'll be done with it and I'll move on to the next one. Um, so it's really behind in that sense, as in there's no structured, hey, we have this awesome data science thing, let's push it through so that way it reaches kind of like an executive level.
Mhm.
Um, but in terms of natural language processing, they're doing really well and it's the forefront of everyone's mind. So they're kind of in this contradiction spot, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. And what I found that's interesting is that they've only kind of just scratched the surface, right?
Hmm.
Within the government industry, and I think that's something important to look at. Especially for say the new generation that's coming in. They're probably like, man, I don't want to go to government, right? Government seems boring, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes, but uh, well, once you get in, right, if you're allowed to innovate, you're allowed to be able to explore and allowed to ask those hard questions and come up with some value at the end of it. And I think as a data scientist, you have to be allowed that, right? If you're
Yeah.
allowed to do that, then you could change the game in the government industry, for sure. And there's some roles out there, right, that I think that people could take advantage of, whether it's like fraud or like preventing waste, right, or being more efficient with finances or the new drugs and all that stuff like that, depending on the
Hmm.
industry you're dealing with in the government. Business intelligence is key and it can help the government at all the levels, right? Even some of the financial decisions that they're making, a lot of times you can have a data scientist in the financial group to be able to help you out, as you hit into different quarterly goals and stuff,
Hmm.
are you wasting money or not, right? I mean, where are the data scientists at in the government to help them out with whether they're wasting money or not, because when I look at a data scientist, or when I look at maybe the end goal, right? A lot of times it's like, okay, I'm getting this answer, it's presenting value and all that good stuff. But one of the things I found was that when I make a decision, I can support it with the data, right? I always say that if you don't have any employees with your company, the data is like your employee, right? It can actually be an employee for you, probably your most loyal employee, right? For you and stuff. So, you know, um, do you see different? Do you see a lot of different roles? Do you see the same like data engineering or data scientist role or business intelligence role in the government? Are they defining that as terms?
So they're not yet. I feel like data science in the government is still, like you said, it's still so new.
Right.
Um, I left this year in February, and right as I was leaving, my agency was just starting to get the okay to start asking those kind of questions, to start asking actual data science questions, and to start being able to follow the work through of doing those questions, right? So I think if they were to be given more freedom, or once they are given more freedom, data scientists, I think you'll start seeing more of those defined roles. Um, and they have to have more people, right? Or the government is very understaffed.
Yeah. I know that feeling right there. So, what do you see? Okay, so I usually ask this a lot of times when I'm talking to a data scientist. but I've never had, more the younger generation data scientists on the podcast. Now, a lot of people are always thinking about the future, right? You think about it, people are scared, right, of the robot, the machine, right? They're like, oh, it's going to take over my job, all this stuff, right? Uh, but as a data scientist now, with the younger generation, where do you see the future in data science going? I mean, one of the things I think about is at the end of the day, you're still going to be behind the machine and you're going to control it, right?
Hmm.
I don't think you might have a different take. Yeah, I don't necessarily think that robots will take over. I think that I think there's still going to be somebody behind the machine, to be able to make the decision and push that stop button, the panic button, if if it does get out of control. You know, and I think that you have to start becoming what I call like a business thinker, right? You have to start thinking about the business, right? That's a huge differentiator between like
Hmm.
a programmer that sits behind a desk and that's a data scientist or a mathematician that sits behind a desk and a person that is actually speaking, to the data at the end of the day, the results and stuff, So, what's your thoughts on the future of data science?
Yeah, I think we're gonna see a lot more of it. I think we're gonna start interacting with it a lot more in a lot of different ways. Of course, you have your robots and you have your grocery stores that are run all by electronics.
Mhm.
Um, and then I think also I have an Instagram, obviously, and I saw people were doing data science on like The Bachelor, on on the contestants, on how many people are viewing into
Oh,
each episode, and that was just on Instagram. So I think you're gonna start seeing data science creep up in all of these small ways across
mhm.
everything that we see. Um, and I think that could be a good thing, and it could also be a bad thing, right? Because if people aren't supplying where they're getting this data from, if you're not seeing the data sets behind it, then they could just say, "Oh, well, I know people are going to trust this statistic just because it's a statistic," and start
Right.
making things up. So I
Oh,
yeah, I think people are going to kind of just like with the news. I think you're going to have to be more vigilant about what you're trusting, whether it's a statistic or just a headline.
right, right. And I know since I'm working on my doctorate in data science right now, one of the things I thought about at first, which I'm not going to do for my dissertation, because I want to graduate. I don't want to waste all this time trying to figure out something. I just want to do something very simple, But one of the things I thought about was like predicting like fake news, right? Fake
Mhm.
news that's out there because that's something that's big, like you said. I mean, with social media just going crazy right now, every business, every person that's out there that just wants to post, right?
Yeah.
How do you detect, right, fake stuff, right? I don't
Mhm.
know, right? But that's one of the things that I definitely have been thinking about, But yeah, you bring up a good point from that, So, all right, so one question, right, that I like to ask. I had Dr. P on the podcast, who's your colleague
Yes.
at Hitachi Vantara Federal, and one of the things I wanted to talk with her about at the time was the journey, right? The journey it takes to be a data scientist. But that was coming from a different generation, right? But then you have the younger generation, the newer generation here that can they're closer to the grind, I guess, if you will, right? They're closer to the
Mhm.
part where, all right, you've been through your elementary, middle school, high school, college, and then now you're like in the career, right? Maybe 2 or 3 years in. But like you mentioned before, you actually had the mindset of I want to be a data scientist, going in, right? Most of
Mhm.
the people that are in the older generation, I believe, including myself, I didn't think about data science at
Yeah.
all, right? I thought about computer science because I thought it was a lot of money, and I was like, oh, I'm going to go to computer science, And then when I realized it was difficult, right? It was when I had to take an algorithms course and it kicked my butt, and I
Oh,
failed.
man.
I had to I had to retake it, And but that's a whole another story. Anyway, so when I look at the closer you are to the beginning stages of your journey, right? You can remember it, right? You can remember
Mhm.
it, and you can be able to shed that light for some of the newer generation that's coming in behind you. So if you could tell me what it takes, right, to be a data scientist, what would you say? it took to be a data scientist where you're at now?
So you can't be afraid to ask questions, obviously, because you're gonna have either a company or customers, and you have to be able to ask the hard questions. They're not gonna know what they want. They're just gonna say, "I want you to make my company succeed." So you have to say, "Okay, well, what numbers are you doing? You know, what kind of data do you have? Where do you get your data from?" Um, and I think you have to be able to think abstractly about the data as well.
Mhm.
Um, I like to visualize the data in my head, but I am a very visual person, so not everyone's not gonna think like that. But you need to be able to think about the data in a bunch of different ways. You're gonna have unstructured and structured data, so you need to kind of think about how these different pieces can fit together.
Right.
Um, and of course, you're gonna have to have some kind of mathematics because that's just
Mhm.
what data science is.
Oh, and I ran from that. I tried to run, and they kept bringing me back. Even in my trying to do my PhD, they're like, Bobby, you have to do some type of quantitative stuff. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do statistics? You know?
Yep.
So, oh my goodness. All right. So one of the things you did hit on, right? And I always say this, if you're trying to become a data scientist, it seems like, so if I listen to, say, like the Dr. P's of the world, right? And then I listen to, the Lexis of the world, and I listen to somebody else, right? But you listen through the different generations, it seems like some of the stuff is similar, right? You still
Mhm.
have to question everything, right? The
Oh, yeah.
goal is to get the answer to the interesting questions, right? So
Mhm.
you still have to question, question, question. If you're not good at questioning, then you need to step it up. That seemed like very key, you know. But then you also, I always look at it as when I look at the different steps to becoming how I became what I label myself as a data scientist. I look at the questioning. I look at learning some of the basics too, right? Like Python coding or being able to code at some sort of script or something like that is like just the bare minimum, right, that you need, right? And then like you
Mhm.
said, math as well. Now they're starting to have this whole no code thing,
Yep.
which I hate a little bit because I'm like, I put in years of coding work and you're just gonna take that away from me. I dare you, you know. They're so wrong for that, man, but now just like drag and drop and trying to,
Yep.
help people who are the end users. But I guess if you look at it, there's not enough programmers to go around in the world to be able to help everybody out. So I guess you need that sometimes. But and also I always say building projects, right? I don't know how outside of your day-to-day jobs if you've done things where you're like, all right, let me build this, right? Have you done that sometimes?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, yeah. See, that's something that I think is key, right? And being able to have a mentor, right? A person
Mhm.
that you can always go to and say, "Look, let me fact
Yeah.
check anything that I'm going through," or being able to, I grab mentors, like it's Skittles or something. I love Skittles. I'm just grabbing them, just pop, just popping mentors everywhere. And I don't even ask them, can they be my mentor or anything? I just you're my mentor, and it,
Yep.
it doesn't matter age range, it doesn't matter. So Lexi, watch out, you might be my mentor, depending, So, and I always say like push the boundaries because,
Yep.
um, like I always the way I became better at my craft was actually going on interviews sometimes, knowing that I was going to fail, right? But certain places like Facebook or Google, right? Some of the
Mm.
commercial world interviews, oh my goodness. I mean, like those are challenging, right?
Yeah.
And I failed probably like about 3 or 4 times, trying to go through these interviews, but it's
Mhm.
okay. You get to know what the industry wants. And if you really want to do that work, you can go back and say, okay, this is what they're looking for. Let me try to become better at that, right?
Mhm.
Do you see that as like those steps as being something that you can mix with probably both generations, you think?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think, building projects, going on those interviews, they all challenge you to think about data sets in different ways, right? Usually Facebook or Twitter or whatever, they'll usually ask you some kind of algorithmic question.
Mhm.
that you may not encounter either in schooling or during your projects. And it just forces you to think about the data set in a different way, which in the end result helps you become a better data scientist.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. All right. So the last thing, right? We got to wrap up soon, but this is very important to me because this is before we start the fun stuff, right? We'll have a fun part. But this is important to me because I'm starting to be on the edge of transferring over to the dark side. I call the dark side Python. Python is the dark side.
The light side.
So I am. I always talk about. I am a strong R programmer. Right? I love R. I taught myself Python, but I would never put myself on the level as Lexi. Right? Because I just taught myself whatever I could just to get by. I mean, the way I look at it is once you learn a programming language and you learn the foundation, right, you can kind of
Mhm.
easily pick up on others easily. It's
Yep.
just syntax, right? It becomes syntax differentiation. So, but since Lexi loves, I think that's her favorite language. She loves Python. We'll talk about Python programming, okay? And I want to shed some light to some of the people coming into the industry and they run away from coding, right? Because they're scared, right? It
Mhm.
is kind of intimidating. It can be, but maybe the Java, the C++ that I learned back in the day, but Python is actually not that intimidating, right? And
Right.
so what would you say some of the benefits are, of Python programming?
Well, it's easy to use and easy to understand, I think is one of the biggest things that Python has going for it. And R is similarly easy to understand as well. Um, I think R is more geared towards statistical processes. It allows you to get down in the nitty gritty and to actually fine tune those kind of statistical changes that you want to do. Whereas Python, they come with built-in packages for it. You can just type it out simply and it does everything for you behind the scenes. You don't have to look at it. You don't have to think about it. But Python does like deep learning or machine learning really well. And it's also very portable, right? So I can write a Python script and then I can import it into another software and it works pretty seamlessly because it's so popular. So I love
Yeah,
Python.
no, you're right. The portability got me with Python, and it's really I guess I call it like a productive language. It's
Yes.
really uh, good at that, and it's easy to read, easy to write, easy to learn.
Hmm.
I mean,
It's
I
easy on the
definitely
eyes.
it is. I know it's easy on the eyes, right? And so and it's only getting better, right? Different variations, different variants. So all right, I think Python has kind of won me over a little
Yes.
bit. I'm just lazy right now about trying to transfer languages. I'm like, oh gosh, I think I went on an interview, and they talked about how you're really good at R, right? But the industry is going to Python, and
Hmm.
they said, you know, uh, you should really try to learn that, right, a little bit more. And I said, well, okay, I guess I didn't want the job anyway, so just put that out there. So whatever. But anyway, so at the end, as everybody knows, I usually end with a dope data nugget at the end of the day. And the way I look at it is, thank you, Lexi. I appreciate you coming on the podcast. You have shed so much light to the new generation and probably helped out the older generation as well, right? Because sometimes when we get older, we get stuck in our ways, right? Everybody does. Right? I mean, I'm one of them. I know I'm going to be one of those people just looking through, being those, looking through my window and stuff, yelling at the kids to get off my lawn and stuff, or just sitting out on the porch and or just doing exactly what I've been doing for years. And if I've been doing it for years, I don't want to do anything else. Don't change me when I turn 50 something. Don't change me at all. So, but what I've learned from this conversation is that there's a lot of things that's different, but there's some things that are universal, right?
Hmm.
The steps becoming a data scientist really hasn't changed that much, right? Some of the key things like questioning, right? That's
Yep.
still a major factor. All
Hmm.
right. Work ethic is still going to be the same, right? You still have to practice, 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 right? You still have to learn a lot, and we talked about finding a mentor and things like that. So I think those are things are really important, right? To understand that although certain things have changed, maybe there's certain point of views that change from generation to generation, but the end goal is always going to be the same, right? Trying to create value for the customer and stuff.
Yep.
And so if there's anything, is there anything that you want to say, Lexi, before for the new generation that's coming in behind you?
Have fun with it.
Yeah,
Don't be afraid of it.
yeah. So many people are like scared, right? It
Yeah.
becomes this buzzword, but when they look at things like math and
Mm,
statistics and programming, you know, I think a lot of people I've known have actually gone to data visualization because it seems so much easier, right? That
yeah.
word, those two words, right? Data visualization actually seems more appealing than math, right? I mean, it even makes me think now, do I want to go to data visualization? So, but yeah, that's a good point. So thank you for that. All right, so now we're about to have some fun. I have this new thing that I've been doing for my past few podcasts, and I got it from Gary Vee. If everybody knows the motivational speaker, Gary Vee, he does this thing called overrated, underrated. And I said, you know what? I want to implement that in my podcast because we get so serious all the time, with technology and data science, and it might be my own selfishness, right? Just saying, hey, look, I just want to have some fun. I just want to hear what everybody else's thoughts are on things that's not related to technology all the time. So, overrated, underrated. I will give you a word, and you get to decide, Lexi, whether you think it's overrated or underrated, right?
Okay.
And it's funny because some of these I've actually presented already to people in the past, but you'll be able to see probably the difference between generations sometimes too, based off of it. So it'll be fun, right? I have about 7 or 8 things that I'll throw out there to you, and you can choose whether it's overrated or underrated, and you can explain, your reason behind it. I'll throw my judgment in there as well. So, all right, ready? You ready?
Ready?
All right,
I'm
okay.
ready.
All right. The first one is cartoons.
Ooh, underrated.
Oh, okay. I
Underrated.
think so too. I think so too. What's your favorite? Do you watch? You still watch them to this
Oh
day?
my gosh, yes.
I know, right? It's like our secret pleasure or something.
Yeah.
I found myself watching. I have a 3-year old, and sometimes he's done watching his cartoon, and I'm still watching it, right? Like old Mickey Mouse and like Peppa the Pig and all that stuff, you know. And I don't tell anybody that, right? So now it's going out there. All right. So next, social media.
Overrated.
Overrated. Oh, what?
Overrated.
Lexi?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, you are part of the new generation. You're saying it's overrated.
I am, yeah.
I'm so surprised. I would expect that more from the younger I mean, the older generation to say it's overrated. So okay. All right, ice cream.
Mm, overrated?
Oh, okay. I love ice cream, so it's definitely
I like
underrated to me.
gelato.
Oh, okay. The gelato is good. So I guess you're right. You're right.
I don't eat it
Um.
all the time though. I'd rather have like candy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm big on ice cream versus candy. I love ice cream and cookies. It was at one point
Mm.
where I was eating it almost every day, and I had to tell myself to stop. I can't take it anymore. So, all right, coffee.
Ooh. Uh, underrated?
Oh, okay. I don't drink coffee. I had like a bad experience when I was a little kid, right? It tastes so bad because my dad, he drank coffee all the time when I was younger and he was older, and I just couldn't take. I tried to taste his coffee that he made, and it hurt me
What's a
for the rest of
no-go?
the day. It was not made right or something. Everybody always tells me that it was not made right. I think he would never put anything else in there, just straight black coffee.
Oh
So
no.
yeah, it was hot and it was nasty, and that's what I remember from it. And I said I'll never taste coffee again. So I haven't from there.
I don't blame
But
you then.
coffee probably keeps you up, right? It's like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm ready. I'm a data scientist. I'm a programmer. I need coffee. That
Oh
might be in
yes.
every data scientist like care package or something. They need coffee in there.
Yes. Give me like a gallon.
Right. All right, teleworking.
Ooh, underrated.
I agree. I
I love
agree.
teleworking.
I know, right? It's almost like once you get a taste of it, can you
Oh
really go back to anything else?
no.
You know, I
No.
mean, if your company that you're currently working at somehow just forces you to, then maybe you have to weigh the benefits, the pros and cons. But if I were to go to another company, I cannot go to a company that says I will go in the office every
Mhm.
day, right?
Yeah, my
I
husband
just
and I talk about this all the time, and we always say I'd rather take a pay cut and work at
exactly.
home than go in every single day.
Exactly. I mean, when you think about it, the benefits, you're actually saving money,
Yeah.
right? When you're in home every day,
Mhm.
right? It's a lot of things, everything from the car and gas, right? You're probably wearing almost the same outfit that whole week if you're on calls and stuff. Who knows,
Yep.
you have your, you don't care, right? So you're saving a lot in many aspects, when you're teleworking. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I'll be willing to take a pay cut, right? Because I'm actually sitting at home, and I'm not spending money, so it
Yep.
makes sense, you know. All right.
Less stress with traffic and everything.
I know the stress, right? The
Yep.
stress of traffic. That's why I told you earlier I had to leave
Mhm.
the position I was at when I would go out to Chantilly. I mean, traffic was just stupid. I mean,
Miserable. Yeah.
I didn't understand. It was one of those times where you're in bumper to bumper traffic and you get out, right? Just because I wanted to just raise my hand and say, who is doing this? Who is I got out one time and I asked, I'm looking around, who is in the front of all of this? I wish I could go up in front of them and say, I dare you do this to me. So, all right. So being on time, what do you think?
Um, underrated.
Oh, okay. I look at it as overrated sometimes. I'm like, are y'all really starting on time? Y'all not starting on time anyways. I'm
That's
coming
true.
in, you know. And then I like to be, the person that comes in and everybody's looking and they're like, who is this person? And I'm really not anybody, right? And I just sit down.
You like to
And,
make a grand entrance.
yeah, they think you're important, right? But you're not.
Yep.
All right, traveling.
Traveling. Ooh, underrated.
Mm, I agree
Underrated.
completely. I agree. I miss it right now with Corona, and I still do it anyways. I'm like, look, I'm tired now. I'm telling you right now, I don't care if COVID is right next to me, sitting on a plane. I'm going to be on that plane with a mask and a hazmat suit, and I'm traveling to where I want to go. you know. All right. So last one. All right. This one right here is going to really be something that I think everybody's going to really pay attention to. All right, Lexi, because you have different generations that really believe in this one thing. All right,
Oh boy.
are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
The printer.
The printer. I honestly think it's overrated.
It is so overrated.
Get rid of it.
Yeah. And I actually had Dr. P knows this person. He was on the podcast, Dr. Benjamin Harvey. He's a data scientist, and he was like he had a printer right behind him, right? He's
Oh
like,
gosh.
printer is so underrated. It needs to be used. I use it all the time. I'm just printing out stuff. I'm like, it kills me to see a printer right anymore.
Yeah.
and because you can just sign off on stuff through PDF, right? Or right, you
Mhm.
don't have to, you don't need a printer, right? But hey, to each his own. So, all right, that was it. That was fun. All right. So, as always, I want to thank everybody for listening to the Data is My Science podcast, the show that makes data your passion. This is your host, Dapper Data. Lexi Vessels, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. It was amazing, to have you on the podcast, and you really shed some light on, the new generation way of thinking, from a data scientist perspective. And you really gave some gems, some strong gems, and some nuggets on how they can become better data scientists. So people that are in high school, people that are in college, if they're listening to this podcast, then you already gave them a way forward. They don't need to do anything else but listen to this podcast and listen to Lexi, and they have a golden way of becoming a great data scientist. So Lexi, before I leave, where can they reach you at?
Um, I'm on Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
and that's about it.
No, okay. You're on LinkedIn as well, right? If they want to,
Oh, yes.
yeah. So if you want to, any data scientists, any data science questions or anything like that, definitely ping Lexi. Very smart individual, and I'm not just saying that because she works for Hitachi, so Hitachi, great company, So all right, so you all, as you know, you can reach me. Just follow me on at Mr. Dapper Data on any one of the social media platforms. My link is always in my bio. And also subscribe to Data is My Science podcast. The link is also in the bio as well. And if you want to purchase my latest book that I have, it's my Dapper Data book. So it's www.mrdapperdata.com/Dapper book. And it really talks about how to help businesses increase profit, increase revenue, and also make better decisions as far as the social media data. All right. Thank you again, Lexi, for being on the podcast. As usual, I'm out. All right. I love you all. Bye.